So I work on metal additive manufacturing of high performance, high temperature materials for advanced applications like gas turbines. And I have some experience in industry, and I currently work in research. So I feel quite strongly about connecting the two, because the dialogue between both of these is so important to have, everything moving forward and still be relevant in additive manufacturing. And then for the panel discussion, I'm going to ask some questions, but also please feel free to put questions in the Q&A. If you feel someone has asked a very good question, just write it up and I will slot the question into the discussion. And so, maybe if Lena starts by introducing herself as well.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Lena. I'm from Colombia, and I'm also French. So I've been living in France since 2013. I came here for studies. So I'm a mechatronics engineering. Then I made a master's in materials and structures, and then a PhD in composite materials. So it's like the inverse of Fiona. So I come from the research and development world, how to say, and I continue to the industry, but I do research and development for industry and obviously for AM in sports applications.
Great, thank you. Maybe Priscilla, if you introduce yourself next.
Sure. So I am Portuguese and I live in the UK, in Newcastle. I am a lecturer at bioengineering. I have done my undergrad in biomedical engineering, and then I specialized in materials for regenerative medicine. And then that led me to the 3D printing side of things, where I started working with biomaterials for 3D printing, developing platforms for tissue regeneration, and then eventually towards bioprinting, so printing those materials with cells inside. And that's what I do mainly now, actually, in my current job. And that's pretty much me. That has been my evolution.
Thank you very much. And then last but not least, Dani.
Hi, I'm Dani. So I'm from New Zealand, and so I'm a designer and researcher, and I work within kind of augmented limb prosthetic design, and with my work I investigate kind of the future perception and architecture of our bodies, and just kind of challenging the boundaries of prosthetic design, and just extending the human form, really. So I work primarily with electronics and 3D printing, mostly SLA and FDM, with a high focus on really high resolution resins, body safe and flexible materials. And so I collaborate with the Alternative Limb Project on upper limb prosthetics, and I'm a design consultant as well, but my main project is the third thumb, which is a fully 3D printed extra robotic thumb that attaches wirelessly controlled with the big toes. And I'm currently collaborating with neuroscientists from the Plasticity Lab at University College London, and most recently Cambridge University, using fMRI and the third thumb as a training model to explore the brain's ability to adapt to augmentation. And really, by investigating how our brains can adapt to augmentation, we can explore the boundaries of and seeing what resources our brain uses to control a body part that's never been there before, and utilizing this research to improve the usability and control of future prosthetics and augmentative devices.
That's so interesting to hear, like from everyone. I always find this, I don't know about you, that additive manufacturing, there's just so much going on that it's almost impossible, or I feel it's impossible to keep up with all the different applications that are popping up all over the place and all the super interesting stuff that everyone does. There's just so much cool stuff, and every single time I hear something new, I feel like, oh, I want to know more about this. But if I would do this, that would replace my full-time job.
Yeah, totally.
So I don't know, maybe to kick everything off, and feel free to unmute yourself if you have answer, if you want to say comment, is just a general question of what new applications have you seen or have you come across recently or in the past that you were just really excited about, bearing in mind that there's always so much going on. So I always feel like I'm missing at least half of the cool stuff that's going on.
So I can start. So actually, I'm really proud of showing you this nose clip. So it's the first Decathlon product that it's 3D printed and it's already in the stores. So we're really proud of this because it's a work from all of my team. And so it's actually for the apnea. I don't know if you say that in English. For this sport that you take your breath and you go under the sea.
Free diving. Free diving?
Free diving, yeah, maybe it's that one. So you put it in your nose and you can go down. So this was what made from the technology MDF, so multi-jet fusion, and it's only dye. So that gives the aspect in black. So we are really proud of this. We have a little structure here, a G-rated structure, so to make it light. And it's actually a one-part print. So we don't have to assemble this part, and we can move it. And then when you have it in your nose, it won't move anymore.
Oh, because it pushes against it. So
you get like little lines here that were automatically printed. I don't know if you can see it because of the light and because it's black, but then it stops. So this is the first product that it's available in store. So we're really proud of this, and we are working in SAV products, so to save products and to satisfy the client. That it's our purpose too.
It's so amazing that it's a final product that is just 3D printed instead of injection molded. That's so cool to see. I'm really excited about that. Yeah, because in my work it's so important to
we're really excited.
Oh, sorry, I think there's a little bit of delay on my internet. I don't mean to interrupt, sorry.
I think it's very nice because we, in my area, we use the gyroid shape for a lot for bone applications because it resembles the trabecular bone. So the inside part of our bone, the more porous bit. So we kind of use that exactly for the same reasons, because it will allow you not only to mimic that, but because it's light and at the same time it can provide you with flexibility and lots of channeling for nutrient exchange. So it's quite nice how these type of designs, they actually can be used in different things and different applications.
Yeah, and Danny, you were saying that there is of course a difference. Sometimes some applications you already find in stores, like the one Lena showed, but it's not the case for everyone. And you work in research quite a lot, like Priscilla as well. So I don't know, maybe you work on very cool applications that you're incredibly excited about, but that are not quite yet there in the stores or ready to be commercially available.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard with prosthetics and kind of augmentation research and stuff. It's I mean, I'm iterating the thumb so fast now, I wouldn't be able to injection mold it. I make a new kind of slight tweak almost every week now, which 3D printing is amazing for, and obviously really kind of quick. And then with the prosthetics side, it's more kind of they're more kind of sculptural as well, rather than kind of the hard wearing, and again, but very personal as well. So having kind of final pieces 3D printed is massive for my work. Yeah, I did want to say just while we're talking on new exciting stuff, just because a girl who from New Zealand actually is working on 3D printing eyes for Weta Workshop. I don't know if you've seen. I'm just going to represent New Zealand a little bit here. Weta Workshop in New Zealand, who does all the big movies. And they're doing amazing prosthetic eyes, obviously not for people at this stage, but for kind of their big sculptures from all the movies. And it's actually voxel printing, which I really find quite exciting, using, I think, the Stratasys machines. And voxels printing is really exciting within prosthetics and obviously research and brain research, because it's how the neuroscientists analyze the brain is in voxels. So to kind of 3D print in that way would be really exciting. So that's just a little thing that I've seen, excited by.
No, that definitely sounds cool. I don't know, Priscilla, what excited you in like recently, or what have you seen that you think mind-blowing?
Well, in all honesty, in my area, everything is a bit mind-blowing, because the little steps that you give are always innovative. But because when you think about what's out there, it's more towards what Dani does, so augmentation, prosthetics. So it's much easier to implement than what I do, not only for standardization regulation problems, but also because it's very hard to biomimic at that level your tissues and how your body works. But I have seen some quite exciting things, like now people are actually able to print mini organs, and they have different types of cells inside that can interact, and that's already a big step. And actually, a very good example of how bioprinting has been implemented is Poietis, which is a company that was working within bioprinting, and they together with BASF, they started to print skin, and it was the first human skin for cosmetic testing. And then later on, they actually got absorbed by L'Oreal, so they merged with L'Oreal, and they are working on printing hair for alopecia. So it's a way of how big players saw the potential of this technology and things that are actually very cool and that are happening, and the impact of them is also great. So we are also seeing lots of development and exciting development towards what the bioprinters can do. So now you usually had just your typical bioprinter that would be inkjet or micro extrusion or even laser droplet, but now you have bioprinters that can print multi-materials. You have bioprinters that can actually print one material, a filament that is made of two materials, so a core shell filament. And those filaments, those can have two types of cells inside. So you're going to have one type in the middle of the filament, and you're going to have another type surrounding the outside, like a core and a shell. And then you have things like what we're doing now, which is a technique we developed in-house at Newcastle University, which the reactive eject impingement, where you are printing two droplets of material, and they meet in mid-air and they polymerize in mid-air. So instead of doing your scaffolds, your parts, and then cross-linking for them to become more structurally integral per se, so that you can actually maneuver them, and handle them without breaking, you can just have a solution of polymer, of material, and the cross-linker, and they will join drop by drop and polymerize and fall already pretty much in a shape that you want. And that also allows you to print lots of cells. And when you print lots of cells, you accelerate all the metabolic processes and biological processes, because the more cells they are, the more they will interact. For most cases, it's not a rule of thumb for all types of tissues, but for most cases, it would be like this. So I think there's a lot going on really in this area, and it will continue to be like this for the next decade, I think.
Yeah, it's
Priscilla, sorry, I just have a quick question. You said mini organs. Is that like a section of organ, or like literally a whole organ? Like when you say actually, mini organs, what does that mean?
People were really printing like mini hearts and mini ears and trying mini lungs, but doesn't mean they are functional. So they might do one function that organ does, but they won't function as the organ as a whole. But it's big steps that you can already actually start doing that. Like you can print different types of cells and they will interact. So that's what they do a lot with the so these mini organs, they kind of work like models, and their aim usually is to prove a concept. When we actually want to study a disease or how cells interact, we create disease models, and they are not shaped like the organ necessarily. It doesn't matter. They just have to be structured like the tissue is. So everything needs to be in the right place, and the stiffness of each layer has to be the right one to mimic the native tissue and create the milieu that you need for your cells and your factors and to interact and do their job. So it's more like a demonstrative thing. These mini organs, like, oh, look what we can do, but in functionality wise, they're not functional per se. You know what I mean? It's just nice
Still
to see
sounds
the
amazing.
potential. Yeah, exactly. When I first started as a PhD student, all I saw was that. It's like mini hearts, mini ears, and I was like, yes, I have these things.
But as you say, it's like already a big step, you know, like
Yes.
it's already like a great advance. And what I find really beautiful is also the synergy of the project, because you have to work with physicians, with engineers, with designers,
Yes.
and everyone it's like telling you like how to build an organ, and it's really complex, you know. So it's really beautiful to see how everyone works to manage to work
Exactly.
together.
Yes, for example, we work a lot, for example, in this project that we have now to explore the technique, the printing technique. For example, I work with one of my colleagues and he works on developing further the capabilities of this bioprinter. And we also work with Reggie, Matt, who are involved on this optimization. And then we have another colleague, a physician, a physicist, who is modeling that we can better predict what to do. And then I am working on the materials development and on the cells. Then there is this girl who works with liver cancer, and she's optimizing the model for the liver cancer. And then we all work together into synergetically feeding into each other's data so that we can push further. And then we have also this company that works with cardiac applications, and they are interested in exploring also the printing of cells towards cardiac applications for veins and arteries, and also for cardiac patches, all these type of devices that you can actually reproduce quite well in a 2D and a 3D culture, but it's very far from going from the the laboratory stage into the clinical stage. That's the big challenge as well, and that's why it's so slow, I believe, as well. There's
But I
no
think,
regulation.
yeah, I think this shows really, in a way, like you, Priscilla, and you, Danny, you're working in research where it's about like thinking about the concepts and then trying to make it work and experimenting and everything. And I think, Lena, because you work in industry, it's then taking these ideas that have been conceptualized and maybe shown in demonstrators, and then in industry you don't experiment all the time on the basic level. You're then trying to make a product work. So maybe you can tell a little bit more about the industrial industrial projects that you're working on, or the industrial work that you to bring something into the stores.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, that depends, because we also work in research and development. And I work with a colleague in the material studies. So actually, I am studying the materials. So even if I'm in the industry, we are focused on the materials and how to get those materials industrialized. And we cannot like avoid any steps, because we have to get a product in the store, we have to make a prototype, and then a functional prototype, a proof of concept, and then we can go to industrialization, and we have to make sure everything is okay. So even if sometimes we think like the industry world is really far away from research, we have to make it through it. We have to do research and development before the product goes to stores. So
it connects all.
yeah, for sure. And here in Decathlon is the same. I mean, we have to work with brands there are Decathlon brands inside of Decathlon. So they are our clients, and they come to us and tell us like, okay, we already have this product. Maybe we have to optimize because of the weight or because of, I don't know. And we are there like to tell them how to do it. And we built that together. Or we can optimize, for example, if like for the green part, for the environmental part. So someone take us a product and they tell us like, okay, there's a lot of plastic in it, how can we make it better? Or maybe we don't need to make a big design, or about what about the color? So we maybe don't need this color and we can make it in 3D printed. So we are working a lot of people together, also like designers, engineers, people from the brands, people from the store that tell us like, okay, I had a client and he told me he wanted this. So we have also to interact, and it's a really beautiful synergy too.
And when you then get to the part like the nose clip, Amanda Hull had a question in the Q&A, which is about the quantities. Like, what sort of quantities are you producing these 3D printed parts that reach the store at?
Yeah, I don't have the number in mind, but I'm just gonna ask in live to one of my colleagues, and I tell you like in 5 minutes, because
Okay,
we don't have. I mean, we are making like little series or medium series, but not a big scale, not yet, because we have few machines, but we don't get out like too many. So I'm gonna ask, and I tell you like in 10 minutes.
I mean, in metal AM, it's we always say it's the unique parts, or it's the spare parts, the replacement parts, the small numbers or medium scale numbers that is really applicable for metal AM. But the really mass production, like you can do with casting, for example, the AM can't really compete with that, but AM is also not optimized for that. So it's not really the right application for metal AM in this case. So I guess the question is in interest of that, because very often when it is about producing parts, then you get these questions about quantities because it's super interesting, but it's also then having it in reference to other manufacturing techniques and why is it different. So it's quite important to know.
It's really important to know that we are doing it also to make this stock reduce the stock, and we don't need like a warehouse to stock nose clip, because we are not selling this everywhere. Like, we are not selling this worldwide. Why? Because here in Lille, for example, we don't need it. I mean, DC is really far away, so we don't go to the pool, and it's freezing in here. But if you go to the south of France, you can find the product, so that it's also a strategy. It's local for local, and we get the clients the product they want and they need in the environment they are.
So maybe something else that would be quite interesting to discuss with you guys, because you're working on very different applications, and especially to me very different. So I just find everything interesting that you're saying. Is, do you have any application example where you think that could benefit from AM even more or further, where AM is maybe not used yet? Or do you have something in mind that you would like to do within the next year or few years? I don't know, Danny, maybe if you start.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, I think there's enough challenges in my area like with 3D printing anyways. I think one of the main challenges is biocompatibility for me, and then once you add kind of flexibility on top of that, so having flexible materials that are also biocompatible, very limited, especially in kind of my area, which is kind of a more kind of accessible self-printing, so I have my own 3D printers way. And so, there is obviously biocompatibility happening in the dentist industry. But there's no need for kind of flexibilities in those flexibility of substrates in those fields. So that's where it's kind of lacking a little bit. This is just definitely a struggle to work with. I have a big challenge working within the lab. I also do design work within the lab as well, and for all the other PhD neuroscientists, not just the ones working on the third thumb. And I make kind of little pieces, and a big thing that 3D printing helps with is making MRI safe objects for holding sensors and kind of different body kind of things for research. There's lots of different stuff. And one of the biggest challenges we were designing kind of 2 years ago was a kind of air air sensor that had to go in the mouth in the MRI scanner. And we really, really struggled and ended up having to kind of cover it in something. So yeah, there's still a lot of room for development in that area for me.
We just had a question about biocompatibility specifically, and that is, what is important to take into account for biocompatibility?
Well, I guess it depends on the application, because biocompatibility by definition is something that does not produce an adverse reaction from your host. Okay, but when it comes to DANI, biocompatibility means when in contact with your skin, it won't cause you an allergy. So whilst for me, biocompatibility is when it goes inside you. So when you implant it, it's not going to cause any adverse reaction. So mainly that you're not going to cause tissue necrosis, I guess, or a toxic response, that your materials do not release toxic products, because, you know, they might be biocompatible during the first week, and then they start degrading and they start putting out nasty stuff into your system. And that's not biocompatible. It appears to be, but it's not. And so it really depends on how you actually how you apply it. So what are we talking about? And it can have a broad sense and then go into more specifics.
Also, sorry, I'm not you know, a material, it's biocompatible, but it's the way it's printed as well. So a lot of FDM prints
as well.
Biocompatible material, but not the actual FDM process for kind of bacteria, and it can't be sufficiently washed. So there's lots of aspects, and yeah, again, it depends on what part of the body. It's very different to skin contact biocompatibility versus, you know, internal or mouth even.
Yeah, especially when you work with natural polymers like myself, with collagen, chitosan, hyaluronic acids, they are like home for bacteria, especially if we talk also about the polysaccharides and you know, carbohydrate-based molecules. And so you have to print them in a sterile environment if you're going to have cells in. If you're not going to have cells in, you can print your materials, but then you need the sterilization. So producing something like that, or like Dani's materials, it means that you then have to have an agreement with the sterilization company that's going to sterilize your device before it's actually implanted or applied. And the same goes for things that go into the operative room. So if in our case, we try to print everything already sterile because we have the cells inside, so avoid bacteria. But it's very hard to find a printing system that will do it. No Cell Link is quite good at it already, but it's, for example, if you're making your own system like we are, then it's a worry. You really are trying to keep your environment as sterile as possible, because, you can put your printer inside your sterile hood and then it will be sterile. But if your printer is like 150 in width, you're not going to put it anywhere inside. You know, like if it doesn't fit, it has to stay outside. So it needs to be sterile, everything. And you open doors, you put things in. So it's very, very hard. So that's definitely a challenge. Definitely is finding desktop printers that can do high throughput with sterile conditions, you know, and then, you know, that fit in a hood.
Yeah.
So, very hard. So you have to definitely always go into the sterilization step. But Dani I think she can go in a bit more towards what that is for her type of prosthetics. With us, it really varies.
We actually have a question that seems to be very, like, multiple people are interested in it, which is how long does it take to qualify these biocompatible materials, and what are the processes to qualify those materials? I guess it's because it's such a cool application. There's a lot of interest, because how do you even do this? With metals, it's easy, but
qualification. So first problem and challenges of our next decade. standardization of the regulation. For example, for the bioprinting things, the things that contain cells, even the biopolymer. So it's very hard. So you see people selling already collagen-based inks and stuff like that, but they don't contain anything living inside. So that's something different. You could use it for anything. When it comes to bioprinting, the regulation is still very gray. So that's definitely something that needs to be worked on now that the area is growing massively. I think, I don't know, Dani, for you, is it easier? I believe either you or Lena might be a bit easier, I think.
Yeah, actually, it's already challenging to get industrialize a product in the sport application. So actually, in the medical application, it's like words. I mean, more complex. But I'm related to this subject because my boyfriend actually works in a startup here in Lille that it's making prostheses to cancer reconstruction, post-cancer reconstruction. So I know that it's really, really difficult. And you already said it, because of this standardization, it's really hard. And then the environment, because you can have you already said the material that it's biocompatible, but also the environment. So they are using, for example, a white room. They are having a white room, and the printers, they got into the white room as new. And then they get another printer only for research and development that is out of that room, so they can test new materials and everything. But in production, they go to the white room, and everything is sterilized, and you go like protecting from the hair to the toes. You are hyper protected. So it's really cool. But I'm not expert in this subject, but it's really great.
Yeah, it's similar in metal IM printing, where, I mean, qualifying materials in general, when you have a new material, is you have to go through the process. That is, it doesn't even matter which manufacturing technique it really is. You always have to go through the process. But then with additive manufacturing is this added complexity that it's still so new. So you kind of have to learn what you don't know yet and what you need to test for. And you need to build up the database in the first place. And then suddenly it's possible to print materials, maybe graded materials that you couldn't manufacture before. So how do you go about this? Then you have to start with all the qualifying processes, and you have to put those in place before you then go through the qualifying process. And then you add the extra layer on with biocompatibility, for example, where, yeah, it's not just is the material biocompatible in the beginning, but also long term, and what happens during manufacturing, and is that biocompatible and all of that. And then I think it's another layer for Priscilla when it's then living materials, essentially. So it's a huge topic that, as far as I know, is being worked on, of course, but yeah, depending on which exactly material you're talking about, it's going to be a little while still before the processes are thought through or put in place that you then would have to go through first.
For now, for example, if you are 3D printing a scaffold, so a platform for cellular generation, but you implant it without cells, then your typical chain would be, you do your biological assays. Once you prove that it goes well in 2D, so in the in vitro culture, you would go into the in vivo, to the animal models. And we also want now to change that, because we want to be able to have synthetic disease models, also to reduce the use of animal models. That's another challenge we are facing, and we are focusing on 3D printing for it, because I think it can add a lot. And then once you actually have it proved in a rabbit, or usually mice, and then rabbit, and then sheep. So these, I'm talking here, we already went up to 6 years in this chain here. And until you get to say, okay, now let's put it in a big animal like a sheep. Okay, and now let's put it in a human. Like, you might never get to the human bit, because the regulation is very strict, and you really have, and it's very expensive. So you can't really achieve that with your normal typical £1 million or €1 million funding. it's very, very hard. You need to have a very, very high budget to reach clinical trials, and you need to be supported by clinicians and hospitals, and it's a whole different level of things. And usually there might be industry involved as well, someone who will be accountable for the production of those devices in a way that they can safely arrive into a human. And that's even without anything living inside. With something living, then you go into, yes, I want to put this in a human, and it has human cells, and it's your cells, Fiona. So I'm going to produce your liver, and it's going to have your liver cells. Yes, and then I'm going to test it in a mouse. How does that work? You know what I mean? And then we go into the level of the disease models, into the models that actually you can compare using the same cells of that person. But here we are really on research, pure research. We are not even thinking about anything close to, let's say, commercial. It's like,
it shows the importance, I guess, of research. Always, like, research does very, very interesting things, but that are far removed from applications. But research then has to kind of demonstrate and generate interest in industry, who then picks it up. Like the example before, where L'Oreal then acquires a company because they see so much promise in it, and then it gets taken further. But you kind of need the backing of industry. Maybe to have a segue away from this. So we had a few questions that are maybe a little bit more general. So in your opinion, can 3D printing be used for mass production? As one question, and then as the other maybe connected question, what tools or services would using AM for a specific application make easier? So what is your opinion on maybe the mass production first?
In mine is very easy to reply. You use bioprinting for personalization, so mass production is not really on the table realistically if you are into personalization.
I guess for Danny, it's similar or the same.
Kind of.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a machine designer, but I agree with Priscilla. Mass customization is my
I think it's more for Lena.
How about you, Lena? Yeah, exactly.
For sport goods, actually, in the technical way, it's possible. Obviously, it's possible, the mass production in the technical way. That depends on the application, and we already saw that. For the sport goods, it's possible. For Decathlon today, we don't do it, for example, but maybe we're going to get there. There is a lot of challenges we even don't know yet, so maybe we're getting that. But maybe there's no interesting. I don't know. That depends on how you see stuff. But the advantage of the AM, it's also not having stock. So maybe in the mass production, if we get products to the stores, but then we printed a lot and we are not selling them, we will get like in the reverse model. So we need to stock maybe. So we have to think it. I mean, we already got a commercial strategy that is been working for a long time for Decathlon in general, but like in the classic process, so injection and that stuff. So we have to think it through how to integrate additive manufacturers and the other challenges that we have to accept to make it like fluid and normal. So technically, yes, it's possible, but that depends on the application.
Lena, do you think that because you're quite, there's obviously better types of printing that works better for mass manufacture, that you're then restricted by the materials that you can use?
Yeah, that actually we are restricted by the materials because of the application. So that depends on the sports, and we are restricted to in the technology. So actually, if we are printing with resins, for example, we are printing with powder, so MGF, for example, and we are printed with filaments or with pellets. So that depends on the technology we choose. We are restricted with the materials. This one, for example, is a PA12 that we use it now. But in the MGF, we have another material that it's an elastomer, for example, and we use it. But we don't got like 100 materials for that technology, not yet. And it's because of the of the technology in general. I mean, that comes from our providers, that there is a lot of research and development that we know that it's a lot of material that exists today for injection, but they are not already available for AM.
Yeah, it's the same in metal AM as well.
Yeah.
Like we're restricted in terms of the materials that are already usable for AM, but then it's also, yeah, it's sometimes also the question, does serialize or does the mass production make sense? Whereas in metal AM, for example, having serialized parts, that can make sense. Like it's the medium quantities for one of my applications in a gas turbine, you need quite a few parts to fill up the part requirements to have a full gas turbine in working. So yeah, serialized parts definitely make sense, but mass production, it then, yeah, maybe makes more sense to move to a different manufacturing technology. But maybe we have one question, I think that would be maybe a good summary to bring this whole panel discussion to a close, and that is what tools or services would make application development easier or clearer? Is there anything that you can think of that would make your life easier if you only had it?
Well, if you can get me something that will regulate things automatically, it would be amazing. No, I guess in our case, for example, what really helps is patient tracking, for example, like understanding if it would help if the health systems were more involved into collecting data for us to understand what type of patients do you have and what surgeons want. So I might approach a surgeon for a certain application and he will tell me what he wants, but I will have to go read lots to understand and make myself like a literature review of what are the needs for that specific problem. Because in the end, I can develop as many things as you want, but if I don't know what the surgeon wants to use or what are the difficulties they experience, then it's harder. I think it lacks a bit that, for example, not necessarily an app, like they go and log in, but that service, the service that you can access that data for you to target better the needs that are currently in healthcare, for example, for our case.
Yeah, that's a good example. Danny, do you have something at the top of your head?
I mean, for me, with the kind of materials I use and the kind of processes that I use, it's a support material is still my battle every day. It just, yeah, I with the resins that the biocompatible resins I use, with that the SLA process, it is the support material it's because they're really, really tough materials as well. It's very challenging. So just how to kind of really make that print. They are working on it. I know that it is a lot of people's challenge. So yeah, I'm hoping it gets just easier and easier just to kind of and trimming everything and a little bit of sanding down. So yeah, that's kind of my main focus.
Lena, can you think of any tools or services that would make application development for any of your examples easier or clearer?
I think it's the same as Priscilla said, data, because actually our clients are the people who make sports. So not only like high-level sportists or professionals, like also you. So if we get data from you, what are you doing? What is your favorite sports? What are the color you use when you choose, I don't know, like a yoga mat or something? With that information, that will make faster and easier our development.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. Like for us, for example, material data, and not just the short-term data that you can quickly test in a lab, maybe, but the long-term data as well, and what's happening to the materials or the components that you make with additive manufacturing. Yeah, I think we're pretty much at the end. I think we have half a minute or so to go. So yeah, that was maybe a good question to round it all off.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all so much for your time. That was really interesting. I think it's been great to, again, have such a broad experience in different industries and been able to discuss the positives and maybe some of the challenges that you're all facing. But thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll now be taking a break. So if everyone can head over to the main stage for a networking session.